Okay, thank you very much. This is big stuff. We appreciate you being here. Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolás Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and
All right. So before he gets on any further of a rant of his great accomplishments from his time as the president, we need to talk about what's going down in Venezuela and the latest news of the abduction of President Nicolas Maduro. So we're going to be talking about this from the perspective of economics and finances to the best of our ability. We're going to have to talk about geopolitics in the process, but we're going to do our best to make this relevant for us with our money. For those of you who may be new, I am a banker of 13 plus years, banking and lending and finance. I've been in that profession that long. Licensed business banker, certified business banker, licensed with FINRA, mortgage license, life insurance license. The point of me bringing up this content is to discuss this with you and bring you context as if you were my client. So I want to give you insight on this so you can understand what's going on around you in this world and hopefully manage your finances and your overall personal economics accordingly. So that having been said, we need to discuss what this means for the U.S. economy and your money. We need to discuss why this happened on a random first Saturday of the new year. We also need to look at the reasons circulating around this abduction / attack and what you need to be mindful about going forward. So to start out with the backstory on this situation, many of you may have already been aware that there has been this random fetish with Venezuela and the drug trade. Not to say that there's not any truth to what's going on with Venezuela being a part of the drug supply to America, but we do know that there's tons of nations responsible for that. Just in South America alone, there's other prominent, maybe even more prominent nations relevant to the drug trade in the United States. For whatever reasons, Venezuela has been targeted by this administration for months now. We've gotten to the point where we were attacking boats in the water near them that were coming from Venezuela. Venezuela was claiming, these are not drug boats. These are XYZ boats. These are not, hostiles. But our administration has insisted that it has been. So they continue to attack. It's gotten to the point where there were threats for land attacks. And then we fast forward to today. Now it's January 3rd at the time of this recording. And we've just flat out abducted the president like 3 days into the new year. So the first thing out of curiosity is like, why on a random Saturday, the first Saturday of the new year? One of the big reasons that you want to keep in mind, this is a brilliant timing if you're worrying about disrupting the stock market. You get this done early on a Saturday, Friday night to a Saturday, and it gives the news and the media enough time to iron this out by Monday by the time the market opens. So one immediate motivation could be to keep the stock market stable. There could be other significant reasons. There's historical context where we've done similar attacks like this in similar windows of time. But I can tell you one major reason and incentive for sure, especially with President Trump, who touts himself as, a huge ambassador of the great economy and the great stock market. That is going to be a major motivation for that. So to keep the markets from completely like this happening on a random Monday or Tuesday, when the markets have an opportunity to respond immediately, you can be certain the stock market is going to take a nosedive from the instability and the wild news. This gives you around 48 hours for the stock market to catch its breath, catch up to the media, things to look stable and possibly not be as rough on the stock market. So that's number one, in case you had curiosity around that. What we need to discuss beyond that, what are the circulating reasons for this? All right. So we're hearing everything from the official narrative of the drug trade situation, Maduro being like this corrupt dictator, you know, he wasn't voted in legitimately, et cetera, right? Again, we know that there's leaders all over the world with this background and this track record. Why Venezuela? Why Maduro? Okay, so the mainstream narrative is Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro is a bad guy, and he's been really advocating and pushing and, you know, incentivizing the drug trade from Venezuela to America, et cetera, right? Then we have the oil. That's the one you're probably hearing the most about, which is Venezuela sits on the largest oil reserves in the world. They sit on a ton of oil, and they're on this side of the hemisphere, meaning the western end of the hemisphere. So with Venezuela having such, you know, a naturally rich resource country, one can imagine that if you have a country with those kind of resources and they're not a friendly government to the United States, that there's probably going to be motive for conflict there. So the oil is the big thing. Trump has come out nearly publicly at this point, or essentially publicly, stating that they plan to tap those oil reserves. And they claim that we had original stake to a lot of those oil reserves, and Maduro came in and kicked a lot of American companies out. So they're basically trying to stake claim that this is oil owed to us, right? This access to this oil is owed to us in the United States. You can take that as you wish, but the oil is one of the top circulating reasons beyond the surface level reason of Maduro being a bad guy. Now, underneath the weeds, the oil is a solid basis we can believe has some context to this attack and this abrupt abduction of Maduro. But beyond that, we have the reality that it's been stated the Chinese had officials in Venezuela to meet with Maduro literally in that same window of time. Now, the backdrop to this is Venezuela is resource rich on this side of the hemisphere and has not been friendly to the United States for decades. China has been building a stronger and stronger relationship with Venezuela. If you can imagine a country as resource rich as Venezuela ending up in the hands of your biggest rival, the next superpower in the world, China, you can see where there's additional motivation to secure or to obstruct that relationship or secure control over Venezuela. So you drum up a motive for a relatively short window of time, to be honest, because this has been going on for a matter of a couple months or so, really like heating up for a couple months, and then randomly we just abduct the president, which is wild. But it was enough of a narrative for President Trump and the administration to feel like it's time to go in, right? I don't know. There's no context out that I've run across at what the Maduro administration and what the Chinese officials were going to meet about or what was going on. Whatever it was, ironically in timing, we decided to strike and kidnap the man and his old lady in their pajamas and get them out of there before they could meet. So even Hamas, way out in Palestine fighting with Israel, has made a statement condemning this attack and abduction on Venezuela and the abduction of the president. So this is having global implications. We are in a very, very hot, cold war with China. And we just recently made a very large, I believe, $10 to $12 billion arms deal with Taiwan, which is Chinese claimed territory, basically, in a very, very, very old standing conflict there. And China came out openly to, you know, they basically like sent military prowess and force around Taiwan to show like, we don't like what you're doing, and we're just letting you know we're right here if you want to get a little frisky, right? And so now you have the Chinese who are about to meet and continue to expand a relationship with Venezuela, who's resource rich, the resource richest when it comes to oil in the world in our backyard. And I believe the administration, with the insight they have that we won't know until they decide they want to show us, if ever, that it was time to strike and do something about destabilizing and gaining control over Venezuela, right? So those are some of the mainstream narratives, and there's one that's kind of under the radar, is the relationship or the conflict between us and China moving in closer on a very, very important nation on this side of the hemisphere, okay? Now let's talk about the potential economic fallout from this. For one, the immediate reaction to the stock market Monday, we'll have to watch. This video should be coming out before that, but we'll have to see if this has a negative impact on the stock market, even though it had a couple of days to cool off. Going out further than that, the oil reserve portion of this conversation, right? If things stay unstable or if there's any form of escalation between us and Venezuela, us and China, just overall instability in some geopolitical landscape or lens, then we could see a scenario where energy prices creep up. Instability will create issues with production potentially, etc. So we could see a scenario, because now Trump has come out and saying we're going to openly control Venezuela until we can get somebody in leadership. So that instability can lead to higher energy prices, and higher energy prices could ripple out through the economy because everything requires energy to be produced, shipped, etc. Right? Anything from food, clothes, you name it, materials, electronics, all has to be produced through energy, and it all has to get shipped to different places. And the energy cost is baked into the cost of those goods and services, right? So we're looking at a scenario where energy prices could increase in a moderately short to intermediate term if things are unstable. The other side of the equation is if things moderate out, we are to continue having control over Venezuela and nobody makes a big bluff about it. China, the Venezuelans, like nobody like does anything crazy on a chessboard, then we could end up with control over this oil as stated. America inserts its companies and assets back into Venezuela, revamps the infrastructure, and starts to control the oil flow out of Venezuela. And that could lead, if all goes pretty and polished, that can lead to energy prices dropping because Venezuela has so much oil, and the United States can start, as Trump has said itself, distributing that oil around the world to other countries. So the economic implications are a toss-up right now. This is less than 24 hours, at least at the time of this recording, and we really don't know how smooth this operation is going to turn out to go. With that instability in the air, if the conflict situation expands on any front, whether that's China, Venezuela, or whatever, this can lead to more spending by the government for military campaigns, you know, whatever the case may be. There could be more government spending, which can, the government is already a huge part of the economy in the United States. So that basically means that there can be a further risk to the increase in inflation. So this is where it comes home to you and I as the everyday American. The oil prices going up or down is going to impact the cost of goods and services. The potential increase in spending, if we continue to expand military operations anywhere, is going to also lead to potential inflation. So the economic fallout from this can be vast, moderately soon. We got to keep in mind, President Trump wants rates down in 2026, and he may have more influence over the Federal Reserve to see that happen. He wants to, you know, increase production in the country. Now he wants to control and manipulate the energy prices, which if it goes in his favor can go in one direction. If it goes against his favor can go in another. There's a lot of different moving parts that can impact inflation. Now, what does this mean for you when it comes down to, you know, your money, your lifestyle, your employment, etc.? If energy prices increase, that is a natural form of inflation in the U.S. economy, right? And anywhere else in the world potentially, but we'll focus on the U.S. If the cost of energy goes up, that means that the cost of goods and services will increase with it. If that happens, then that basically means that the cost of the goods and services that you rely on a regular basis could start to increase again further than what they already are. We just kind of got out of the red zone with inflation in the last, you know, call it 9 to 15 months. Now we could be in a scenario through fiscal policy, geopolitical policy, where there could be another motivating factor to increase inflation again. So that means all of the goods and services, groceries and things you're paying for that you're already probably looking at the grocery bill. Like I got one bag of groceries and I still walked out of here paying 3 figures. That could get worse. You also want to keep in mind as well, this could have a negative impact on the economy in the intermediate to short term. the economy in the United States is really in flux. Now, mind you, third quarter GDP apparently has come out, and apparently the economy did really well overall in the third quarter, which is the most recent data we have. For those of you who may not be familiar, GDP is basically going to be gross domestic product. It's the overall production in the country, which is a signifier or a metric to determine the health of the economy, the production of goods and services, etc. Right? All of that went up in the third quarter. So technically, we're trending in the right direction. But some of these bold, blatant moves, like abducting presidents and increases in energy costs, can impact that in a potentially negative way. So you want to be mindful of that, where you already have layoffs increasing because unemployment is ticking up. So watch the industry you work in if it's closely related to the energy sector in any way. Be mindful of your employment. If energy costs increase abruptly in the next coming months, and that creates pressure for the companies you're working for, this can come home to roost for you. So be mindful of the industry you work in. Be mindful of the increased costs in goods and services. We have to see how this plays out geopolitically. We'll have to see how this plays out. We're going to continue to track this story, over the coming days and potential weeks, and maybe even months, to see how this unfolds. But these are the kind of things happen on a bigger stage that come right down to your pocketbook, right down to your wallet. So I just wanted to tap in with this and bring the joyful New Year's cheers in with abducting presidents and random attacks seemingly on other countries that can lead to increased costs in goods and services and high inflation, or expanded military conflict somewhere else in the world. Like, we need any more of either one of those. Comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on the situation. Let me know your perspective on what the motivation of our government to go in and do this to Venezuela. Let me know if you think this is good, bad, or ugly. Let me know what you think the implications will be economically. Just let me know your thoughts on the next steps or what comes next with this in your perspective. Comment down below. To all my pioneers, welcome back. To my new viewers, welcome in. I want you to like, comment, share, subscribe. If it gives you the option, boost the video. Support the channel so the channel can continue to support you. Also, I want you to get in the description section down below and tie in with me on Instagram. You'll be able to get in on there, and I'll be putting out more content and diverse content on Instagram so you can get in closer with me and connect with other pioneers there. But other than that, I want each and every one of you to stay focused, stay in motion. I'll see y'all soon.